Welcome to the Evolve, Move, Play podcast. I'm your host, Rafe Kelley. At Evolve, Move, Play, our aim is to help you cultivate a more meaningful life and a more heroic self by reconnecting deeply to movement, mindfulness, nature, and community practices. This podcast was created to bring the best and brightest minds in all of these subjects together to better understand how we can create an empowering and sustainable ecology of practices for personal growth. If you're interested in being part of this ongoing conversation, the best way you can support us and get involved is by joining our Podcast Plus membership. By joining, you will get backstage access to our live podcast airing once a month, as well as a private question and answer session with me and our guests after the show. On top of that, you'll get access to our thriving online community where you can continue these deeper discussions with people all over the world who are just as passionate and curious about these topics as you. More details about the membership, as well as the link to get signed up, are in the description below. And whether you can join, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so that you can be notified every Monday when our episodes drop. Thanks so much for your support, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Evolve, Move, Play podcast. This week, my guest is Oliver Thorpe. Oliver is a very talented parkour athlete from Denmark, originally from Australia, as we'll find out in the podcast. He is amazing, really specifically right now in the development of the ascent game in parkour. That is climbing rapidly up buildings. And he's really been doing some incredible work in that area. So I've been really enjoying his work. He's also has a history of doing lots of amazing kind of different areas of movement, which we'll talk about in the podcast. But I ended up reaching out to him and trying to schedule a podcast because he and Tysvid wrote a blog article in response to some of the claims of Theo Tanchemek in some of his video breakdowns of people's movement. And I thought it was a really cool example of kind of scientific thinking applied to parkour. So I thought it'd be fun to talk to Oliver about his training and his philosophy and kind of some of the ways that he thinks about movement. So that's basically what we did. And Oliver's a really fun guy to talk to, really amazing mover. So if you're interested in the higher level, kind of what it looks like to train at the highest levels of parkour, how people develop new and interesting areas within our approach, and kind of, what the philosophies within what parkour athletes are thinking about philosophically, you're going to enjoy this one. So without further ado, my conversation with Oliver Thorpe. So Oliver, this is the first time we've ever got to meet, but I think we've run into the same circles and probably run into each other's names quite a few times over the years.
Yes, definitely.
I feel like the last time I was in Denmark, it was like we almost were going to meet up or something, but it didn't happen. You weren't around or injured or something the last couple of times I was over there.
Yeah, I can't remember. I remember you messaging me asking if I wanted to jump around in some trees, but I think I was either busy or injured. Have you ever been out to those trees yet? The Concordia? No, I haven't actually been out to them yet. So that's still on my list for doing at some stage.
They're amazing. You got to check them out. They're so rad. So, tell me a little bit about how long have you been doing parkour?
I have been doing parkour for a little bit over 15 years now.
Okay, so you started 2016 or 2006, sorry?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, started February 2006.
Okay, cool. I started February of 2005.
Nice. Yeah. Almost the same time.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
Once you're in over a decade, it's kind of you're just an old guy in the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
So how old were you when you started?
I was 16.
16.
Wait, no. Turning 16 that year. So I was 15 when I started.
And did you find the community right away?
Yeah. I started training with other people. One of my friends came to me at school one day and he was like, "Holy shit, you have to see this YouTube video when you get back home." And then I went back home, saw it, and I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And we found some people that were training in the city and asked if we could join up to one of the jams.
I recently had Yepi Skogo on the podcast. Did you train
yeah.
as well?
Oh, I mean, I actually started training in Australia.
Oh, okay. There we go. That makes sense.
Yeah. I did train with him a bit when I moved back to Denmark, but not until after a while.
So your accent's a little bit strange. So you grew up partially in Denmark, partially in Australia? Is that how it went?
I grew up in Australia pretty much completely, but I think sort of I've never had the most Australian accent. And then after living 11 years back in Denmark, I kind of meld my accent a little bit, I think, because just when I moved back, people were like, what are you saying? What? So I just kind of started speaking more neutral, I guess.
More. But it's kind of Danish. There's something Danish about your accent, which was surprising in the interviews because your name sounds English, right? Or Anglo, right? Oliver Thorpe.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Australia, or are you? No, like, how did you end up?
My dad's Australian.
Dad's Australian. Your mom?
Yeah, so I still have. Yeah, exactly.
So you started out. Where were you in Australia when you started training?
In Brisbane.
Brisbane. Okay.
Went to primary school and high school there.
Nice. Who are the kind of community in Brisbane? In the Brisbane area.
Sorry, what?
Who are the community in the Brisbane area? I don't know that area as well.
No one who's actually still like training like consistently anymore, actually. There's still a few guys who train, but they're like they don't really post on the internet or anything. But like right now it's the Pawson twins, who you might have heard of. But they didn't start training until pretty much like just after I left.
Okay. Yeah, Brisbane has amazing trees. I want to go visit as well. Speaking of amazing trees. You there, Oliver? You froze on me.
Maybe you just completely cut out for me.
Yeah, same.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was saying that Brisbane actually has really great trees as well. I look forward to getting the chance to go there and explore.
Oh, yeah. Brisbane has some absolutely crazy trees. I remember playing around in them when I was a kid and also after I started training parkour.
Yeah. So did you have...
How would you rate them compared to the ones in Denmark?
Well, I mean, I would say generally that Australia has better trees than Denmark. Denmark's quite surprising, though. But the one tree in Deerhaven is, I think, my favorite tree in the world. The contorted beech grove that Henrik Rossel found. Like, get Sander to take you out there. It's freaking amazing.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I might do that one day.
Between huge structures there, you could do descents and ascents up these trees if you like to. There's like tic-tac stride lines. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, there are some cool trees in Denmark. But yeah, definitely the big Moreton Bay fig and the cotton trees that they have down in Australia are amazing as well. Absolutely absurd stuff.
Yeah.
So did you have a sport background before parkour?
I mean, I kind of I tried a little bit of some different things. So I wasn't super sporty. But like I played soccer a little bit, or football for those that want that. So I did that for a bit, and then I did diving, like springboard diving, for a couple of years. No, I think for 5 years actually, kind of on and off. And then I played Australian football for a few years as well.
So, totally random tangent, but can you describe Australian rules football to the audience? Because I think it's actually a fascinating game. Nobody knows about it outside of Australia.
It is a great game. I think a sort of very apt in some ways description that I've heard lots of people say is it's kind of like American football without protective gear. Which is, I mean, it's completely different, but I don't really know how to sort of give a quick description of it. I think you'd have to maybe you can do something better, but like you can have a look on YouTube. But it's I think it's a very confusing game if you don't know the rules.
So how many players per side are there?
I think there's 18.
18. So it's substantial.
I can never remember, but there's a lot.
Yeah, it's way more than football or soccer, American football, that adds to the chaotic feel of it. How big is the field? It seems like the field's also really big.
I think it's like 180 meters long.
Quite.
Sorry to all Australians if I'm absolutely butchering this, but
so it's like twice the size of a American football field or a soccer field.
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy. And then there's an aerial aspect to the game that you don't have in rugby, but that's from kicking. Like you run and kick the ball, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's not really anything that's sort of like there's no offside. So pretty much the whole game, there's players like from both teams all over the whole field. And then, I guess, the idea is you have a ball which looks quite a bit like a rugby, but it's just like a little bit more rounded. And the idea is you sort of have to get it get it down to the end of the field and then kick it through some high goalposts. If you kick the ball to one of your teammates and it goes over 15 meters and they catch it, then the game stops and they get to take a few steps back and then start over by either kicking it to someone else or passing the ball along to someone.
Crazy game. There's also one of the things about Aussie rules football is really crazy is how they lift people into the air to receive the ball.
Yeah.
People want to look up the highlights of that. It's a very strange thing that I've never seen in any other football type game.
Yeah, it's a really cool game, I think.
A lot of crazy game for sure. So
I think if you ever go to Australia, go watch a game live, even if you don't know any of the rules. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. So that was just a random tangent, just because I think it's an interesting game. But so your background, so you had a little bit of sport background, but not a lot. Did you? Was that on your end?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I'll just close the door here. Maybe there's people being noisy outside. There we go.
Okay. So you did you find that you took to parkour pretty quickly? Was it relatively easy for you to acquire the skills, or?
Yeah. Pretty. I'd say yeah, definitely. I mean, the very first day that I went to a parkour jam, like the people there asked me, like they're like, "Hey," and it's like, "Welcome." It's like what can you do? And I think the very first thing I did was a cat pass over a rail.
Okay.
Which I think for most people that have tried like parkour, that's maybe sort of not one of the first things that you do.
Yeah. Took me about 6 months to learn how to do Kong vaults without clipping things. So I think that's a more typical progression. So one of the things that's interesting to me is you've kind of been at the forefront of a few different trends in parkour, it seems like, but your style has changed quite a bit over the years. So I remember, maybe 10 years ago, you were really like Kongs were your thing, cat passes were your thing. You did really big diving cat passes. I was watching a video of you're doing a cast up to double Kong down, I think, where you were going from probably like maybe 8 foot high bar, casting up, Konging, and then doing a second Kong down on a wall that was maybe 4 feet lower.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, maybe even a little bit more, but.
So, and then you also, it seems like, got pretty into the bar swinging skills and kind of developed some pretty unique style within that realm. But then more recently, like all of your footage is basically is the Ascent game, right? Where you've gotten
pretty much, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you've cultivated your style and what's brought you into specific kind of passion projects within.
I think for me, it's been sort of very, I guess like it's been very motivation driven. So I've pretty much just done what I thought was fun and interesting at the time. And I've always done like quite a bit of different stuff. Like, I mean, I still do quite a lot of cat passes and that sort of thing. But I think also I haven't been traveling that much lately, so there's not really that sort of many interesting new ones that we find around Copenhagen. So that could be one of the reasons why I don't post that sort of stuff anymore. But I think like one of the things that's definitely changed lately is the ascent descent type stuff that I've been doing, and I think sort of one of the things that's really pushed me that way is seeing other people doing it as well, but also the fact that I think about I can never remember exactly. I think it's like 5 or 6 years. Well, it's about like 6 or 7 years ago. I had got an ankle injury. And then I started climbing a lot because I couldn't jump that much anymore. So I started, indoor bouldering mainly. And did that like a lot for about a year and a half, until I finally figured out my ankle, and I ended up getting surgery and got a ligament reconstructed. And then after that, I started jumping a lot more, but I've been climbing for long enough that I just really, really love climbing. So I kept doing both parkour and climbing sort of alongside each other. And then sort of like lately now, I've had some friends who've also enjoyed doing ascent stuff. And it's kind of just worked out that that's what we've been focusing on lately. Like I actually really, this isn't completely true, but like most of the time I really don't like training alone. So I do a lot of the stuff that sort of the other people around me do. And obviously they probably get influenced by me as well, what I want to do. But yeah, I think it's just sort of after seeing like some of my friends and also Shane from England doing lots of ascents, I've just like I guess my eyes have been open to lots of different buildings and that sort of thing around Copenhagen and also the other cities in Denmark. So I've just really been enjoying sort of being able to combine my parkour and my climbing into something that I find really interesting and technical and just a new challenge, which is I think one of the things that drive my physical practice.
Did you pay attention to Tom Coppola as he was developing his side of the Ascent game? I kind of feel like Tom was really the first one who was really pushing his stuff in the parkour community, hybridizing bouldering with parkour. That's true.
I just forgot about Tom there. Yeah, I trained with him the one time I've been to the US as well, and we had a really nice time. And I've definitely also been inspired by him watching some of his stuff. He's really, really cool guy and a very nice guy as well. So
yeah, I love Tom. He's just across the border from me, right? So he's a YouTuber. And it's just been interesting to me I think it's interesting how these kind of trends come and go within the parkour community. Like I remember when Blaine, Chris Rowett started doing Kong Precisions. And like, I mean, I guess like Stéphane Vigreux had been doing that and like really building that up in the French community before Blaine got into it. And I imagine maybe Blaine got it from him, but as far as like the rest of the community that I was aware of, like nobody had really explored that until Chris started putting out his videos. And it was like, everyone was doing it, right? It was like everywhere.
Yeah, could be. I think we were a little bit isolated in Australia and we weren't really paying that much attention, or at least sort of my group of friends weren't really paying that much attention to what was happening in the rest of the world. So we were kind of just doing our own thing. And I mean, maybe it was just me that was completely oblivious, but like, I think we'd been doing like, at least since when I started, we'd been doing Kong Precisions, the whole time. So maybe that was before my time, actually, sort of in the year between when I started and you started.
Right around when you started, probably was when Blaine came out.
Yeah.
So it might have trickled into awareness around that time. So I've seen that happen. And then, I remember when when everyone was doing angel drops and devil drops.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like nobody does those anymore. And now everyone does like worm gainers or cast gainers or worm backs and cast backs. And
yeah,
I just
pretty much. That's actually, yeah, it's a kind of a funny thing that like, because as you said, like no one does angel drops or devil drops anymore.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Just, yeah.
Angel drops are really aesthetic looking.
Mm.
And you don't have to like go down the wall and get into a new position. Like I find like worm casts or worm backs like really ugly. Like you see a guy do a cat leap and you expect to climb up and then he's like slows down, stops at the bottom of the wall, does this funky looking movement. I don't know, just a personal thing.
Yeah, no, I actually really like them, but only if you can kind of get the transition from like an arm jump to the cast back to be fast. Otherwise, it just looks like why are you doing that?
Yeah. So then, you know, the ascent and descents has been kind of the big thing since. I'm trying to remember when it really happened, because it was like Dylan Baker put out his video, which really kind of busted up and the descent idea. And at the same time, Tom put out his video on ascent, which really, you know, showcased a much higher technical level in climbing than had ever been seen in the parkour community. And now I see like Shane Parkour is doing incredible things. You're doing amazing things. Momo, who I'm guessing is your training partner.
Sometimes he lives in a different city than I do in Copenhagen, but like we try and sort of go forwards and backwards like once every month ish. But yeah.
Is there anyone else who you're paying attention to who's really pushing the limits in that side or the game?
I don't know. I'm actually really bad at social media. Like I don't watch that much of it, and I also have a terrible memory. So the combination of that, I
not the guy to ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And sorry to everyone for forgetting you, but yeah, I need a little bit of time to think about that.
Are you hearing that loud beep when it happens?
Me? No.
So where is that coming from? Oh.
Is it like, is it still going?
No. I'm just trying to figure out what that is. It's unpleasant.
I mean, it could be on my end, but I can't hear anything with the headphones in. I just tried taking one out, but I can't hear anything now.
Let me see. My camera just died? I'm going to pause for a second. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so these climbing challenges that you're doing, you're moving quite fast and you're getting pretty high off the ground. How do you mentally prepare? Like what goes into the process of taking on one of these challenges, and what are you doing to sort of make sure that you are maintaining your safety as you're doing these type of challenges?
I think if we start with the sort of mental part, I have an interesting, I guess, sort of relationship with fear and heights. Maybe it's a normal thing, but I'm not sure. So like the first time, I mean, I start just by climbing up sort of very slowly to sort of like maybe sometimes climbing up the whole ascent, or other times just kind of climbing up in parts. So I'll climb up and I'll be like, oh shit, now I'm pretty high. This is scary. Then I'll climb down again. I'll be like, all right, cool. Wait a few minutes, then sort of climb up again. I'm like, okay, feels better being here. Try sort of the next move, and then be like, oh, that was pretty scary. I'm gonna climb down again. And then I sometimes do that, like, I don't know, sort of somewhere between 5 to 10 times before I get up to the top. And then sort of once I've done it feels usually quite easy and not that scary to sort of get all the way up again. And then I start working out like the small details. So like, where should I put my like where should I put my left hand? Where should I put my right hand? Sort of like which places make sense to grab, and try and kind of get the speed going in all the different sections as well, until I kind of have until I have sort of all the sections worked out how I want them to be. And then I just start trying the whole thing by like doing it as fast as possible. And I mean, like that process can take like, I don't know, 5 minutes, depending, like 5 minutes or an hour or something, depending on how technical, scary, or like tricky the climb is. Yeah, and then I try it. Usually quite a lot of times, because I'm always unhappy with something. And then at the end, either I hit that run where I'm just like, okay, that was really good. I don't think, like, realistically I'm going to be able to do any better than that. Or I'll just be like, okay, I'm happy with that, because I've sometimes spent like hours just looking at one challenge, and I've kind of gotten to a point in my life that, I don't know if it's in my life, but with my training, where I'm happy with it not being perfect, and that's fine. Like I don't need to spend multiple hours doing something unless I really enjoy it, which I usually do, of course. But sometimes it's just like, all right, it's fine, move on, let's do something else.
So do you kind of do sessions that are very specific to ascents, and then maybe other general parkour sessions, or is it all kind of mixed together?
I'd say it's a bit of both, actually. So sometimes we do sessions where, like, all right, let's go out and find some ascents, or we found this ascent, let's go try this. And other times it's just like, let's go out and train, and then we'll be like, oh, that's a cool ascent, let's try that. And then, oh, that's a nice, I guess, more sort of like classic traditional parkour spot with like precisions and laches or something like that. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. Sometimes like with a sole focus, or sometimes just doing sort of whatever feels good, whatever's inspiring.
I imagine that some of those routes, like that could be an entire training session, a quite exhausting training session. One round through that is satisfactory. So how often is that kind of like the whole session, just to get the one ascent whatever you want?
No, I don't think I've actually ever had like any session where it's just been doing one thing. Usually we end up doing more things, because I mean, I think like the most time I've spent doing one ascent has been like 2 hours or something like that. And usually my training sessions are longer than 2 hours. So I almost always end up doing more than just one thing. But I mean, it could be that we do the ascent and then the rest of the training is a bit more chill, because I mean, it's a bit tiring. But again, usually ascents they're not that taxing for the legs. So I could do jumps and stuff afterwards. And I don't know, also they're usually not that hard for the arms as well, especially like I've been doing a lot of climbing. So like the ascents we do, they're on pretty big holds compared to what I'm used to at the climbing gym. Yeah. So it's not that bad. It's more of the sort of like the technical difficulty of getting everything just to sort of match up perfectly, which is the challenging part, not the physical difficulty.
So what does a normal training week look like for you? Do you have a fairly set schedule or kind of structure to your training, or is it pretty open?
At the moment, not really, because like work, Corona has just like fucked everything completely. Yeah. But I'm trying to sort of get back to something that resembles normal. But I think like, and it also depends on time of year as well. In the summer, I'm a lot more outside. In the winter, I'm a lot more inside, of course. But like in general, I'd like my sort of week to have, I do usually like 2 strength training sessions, either at the gym fitness center or at the climbing gym. They have like a weights area as well after that. And then I like going climbing like twice a week ish, like at the climbing gym.
Yeah.
And then I do parkour anywhere between like 2 to, I don't know, 5 times a week, something like that. But then sometimes like I have a job which lasts a few days, and then my week just gets completely like thrown out of some sort of sync. What?
Are you working in the stunt industry, or what kind of work do you do?
No, I'm actually pretty much doing like almost full-time parkour stuff at the moment, which is, I mean, when I say full-time, I'm not working full-time. It's just mainly what I'm doing. I'm definitely not making very much money with it at the moment, but hopefully that'll change sometime in the future. So I've been doing a bit of work for a Danish clothing company. I'm also doing some like commercial videos for some food stuff. I've been doing a little bit of commercial stuff, promotion stuff for a Danish animal rights organization. Mm-hmm. So it's mainly filming jobs or like performance-ish stuff, and then ascending strength as well. But that usually doesn't take like complete days out of my schedule where I can't train besides.
So when you do strength training, what kind of strength training exercises do you like to use?
I think I mainly do sort of very classic ones. I've been doing quite a few squats, deadlifts. I like to get some Bulgarian split squats in every now and then. I've started doing quite a few sissy squats. Mm-hmm. Really enjoying them. And then I also do like weighted pull-ups, weighted dips. And that's what I like mostly do. Sometimes I'll do something different, but like that's at least the sort of the bulk of my strength training.
How long have you been strength training?
It's a good question. Probably like, I know 6 or 7 years, I think. Like a bit on and off at the start, but like relatively consistently for the past, I'd say 4 years, I think.
I remember when most people in the parkour community were skeptical about the utilization of traditional strength and conditioning, and everybody was,
me too.
Was doing the classic Yamakasi conditioning stuff. Or not everybody, but lots of people were super into the conditioning stuff. So it's always interesting to hear kind of how people found that and how it's impacted their performance. What did you notice? What do you notice that you gained from incorporating these kind of big lifts into your training?
With the leg stuff, I think like the most noticeable thing has been my like control in landings. Mm-hmm. So I felt a lot more sort of stable while taking big drops. Yeah. But also my jumping power has increased a bit as well. And like with the upper body stuff, I've noticed a big increase in like dyno strength, climb ups, that sort of stuff.
Very cool. And how about the transfer from the rock climbing to parkour in a more general sense? What do you notice there?
I mean, I think it sort of has a bit of a crossover with the strength training as well. So I feel stronger when I'm hanging on stuff like arm jumps, cat leaps, dynos, that sort of thing. But I think like the crossover for like jumping stuff is probably not very big.
Yeah.
And also obviously for ascents like that, I think that makes an absolutely gigantic difference. Just sort of being able to pull from one hold to another, like relatively easily compared to like some of the other people that I sometimes train with that don't climb as much. And also just comfortability holding like what I'd still like see as a pretty big hold, but like, I don't know, maybe like a I don't know, 1/2 inch hold, 1.5 centimeters. I'm like, oh, this is gigantic. And other people are like, oh, that's a pretty terrible hold. So that makes a difference as well. Also just for comfort when climbing up in the heights, because I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm fine with this.
Spend a lot of time with it. So it sounds like you're putting in quite a few hours of training at this stage, right? Like, how long do you spend in a strength training session?
It differs, but I'd say probably somewhere between like 1 to 2 hours.
Okay. And probably rock climbing 2 hours plus, or 1 to 2 hours?
Yeah. Rock climbing's probably usually like 4 hours or something like that.
8 hours.
Yeah, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more.
8 hours of climbing a week, 2 to 4 hours of strength training a week, and then up to 5 days of parkour training where you're training over 2 hours per day. So you're averaging somewhere like 25 hours of training a week.
I'd say I'm probably like somewhere between 10 and 25, maybe 30, like somewhere between 10 and 30 hours. Like it differs a lot from week to week, but yeah, like quite a lot of training.
That's a lot. So I imagine you interact with a number of other kind of professional parkour athletes in the spaces you're working with. How many athletes are training, in your experience, around those kind of hours?
That's actually a really good question. I think like a lot of the sort of the top level parkour athletes, they probably train around the same time, I think, plus minus a little bit. But I don't know. I don't think it's like a super high amount of hours compared to other like top level parkour athletes.
Interesting. I think a lot about the comparison. Man, I wish that sound would go away. It's just like boom, just this loud.
Yeah, I heard it there as well, but not on my end, I don't think.
I don't know where it's coming from. It's not like in my house.
No.
So anyways, I'm interested in the comparison of parkour to gymnastics and track as a kind of way to track our progress as a sport. And I think that we've achieved really something astonishing in a very short period of time. And one of the things that's really interesting about it is that it seems like, parkour athletes don't really tend to spend the hours that say gymnasts do. Like gymnasts are spending, an elite gymnast is definitely a 40-hour-a-week sort of job. It seems like a lot of people in parkour are able to achieve comparable levels of skill with substantially less time investment. Definitely over 10 hours, but not. I don't really think anyone's training over 40 hours consistently.
No, I can't think of anyone like off the top of my head. Like the only two people that I think would like be close to that would be like Ed Scott and Tim Champion, and I don't think they're up there either.
Yeah,
maybe Daryl as well. Daryl Stingley. I think he trains quite a lot as well. But I don't think we're up at 40 hours.
Yeah. So another thing that I find interesting, or that I want to talk to you about, is the culture of parkour in Denmark specifically. Because I mean, it seems like you guys have the highest density of parkour parks in the world. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, probably.
What's the kind of social acceptance of parkour in Copenhagen? If you're around training in downtown Copenhagen, are you going to get moved on really quickly? Are you going to get pressured by the police, or is it pretty open?
We very rarely get moved on, to be honest. Like pretty much everyone is like either they just kind of walk past and like don't really pay us much attention, we get lots of people though that like stop up and like, oh, that's really cool, nice work, and pretty much everyone knows what parkour is as well. So like, oh, you training parkour? It's like, yeah, we're just training out, enjoying ourselves. Yeah, so social acceptance in Denmark, I'd say, is very high, sort of in a general sense. I mean, sometimes we get someone that's, I guess, either super scared of what we're doing or just, yeah, I don't know, just gets really angry at us. But that's like really rare.
Yeah.
Like I remember that happening, yeah, a lot more in other countries.
So why do you think Denmark has, it seems like parkour has really become part of the sport culture of Denmark in a way that it hasn't been accepted necessarily in other places? What do you think of this?
It's a good question. I think Danes are quite like open to that sort of thing. Like, I mean, we've had a really big sort of, I guess, health fitness culture sort of pushing for the last while. So everyone's like quite health conscious and really enjoying like movement. And I think they don't see us as some like just stupid kids playing around on the side of the road, pretty much. And also there's been quite a lot of money from the government being pushed into creating the parkour parks, those sort of spaces. Quite a lot of schools now, they have it in their curriculum, actually. So they have, parkour as part of their school. Why it's gotten to that? I don't know, like a lot of the sort of the old school people here in Denmark, they've done a lot of work sort of pushing parkour, pushing a nice message as well. So that's definitely helped as well. I think people are maybe just less scared of new things here than they are in some other places.
Is it similar in the other Nordic countries? Like if you go to Sweden or Norway or Finland, is there a really high acceptance there as well? Do they also have a relative concentration?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that it's very similar there compared to here as well. One of the other things I was thinking about as well is we don't have that like liability issue, as I know you have in quite a lot of other countries. Like, I mean, if we fall down and break our leg here, like, I mean, it's our fault because we're idiots doing stupid shit. Not actually. I mean, we're usually pretty careful doing our stuff. But like, I mean, it's a culture of like, if you fell down doing something and it's your own fault, then why would you sue someone else for your own
you also have
what's it called? Like what? Sorry.
You have a socialized and actually pretty good medical care system there as well. Right?
Yeah, that as well. Yeah. So we don't need to sue people because otherwise, I don't know, we can't afford to get our leg fixed or something like that, which I think also makes life in general just a lot easier and a lot less, I guess, fearful for what if something bad happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's interesting how it seems like I mean, obviously there's lots of other social factors, but kind of the early adopters within a community often set a tone. Like here in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington anyways, we also have really easy relationships with the authorities generally. Like we don't get moved on very much, but we kind of like Tyson Checker, my old kind of the co-founder of Parkour Visions, in like 2006, 2007, he organized a group to go speak to the Parks and Recreation Department at their like annual meeting and just tell them, hey, this is what parkour is. It's going to be happening in your parks. And like, we want to kind of be a liaison so you can understand it and make sure that it's safe. And we've just pretty much maintained a really good relationship with the parks ever since. It took a long time to get them to kind of like officially approve of us, of it. Like they turned a blind eye to us for a long time in a very like obvious way. We put on in 2012, I think, where we were at a Gasworks Park, which is a pretty famous spot in Seattle. And we actually broke one of the walls, like a wooden wall. And we called the parks department immediately and told them that it had happened. And we offered to organize donations through our community to get the wall fixed. But they just fixed the wall and never contacted us back. And, just like, they wouldn't give us a license to have events, but they wouldn't do anything about us. Like, they were like hands off, which was very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But that's also really cool that's actually sort of worked up to having a more acceptance of parkour. And as I mentioned as well, I think that's also one of the big things that's happened in Denmark. Like we've had some guys just sort of really talking to schools, talking to like all sorts of different institutions, getting parkour to like, this is parkour. Yeah. We're not trying to break your stuff. We're just training, having fun here.
Yeah, you're moving on some pretty amazing architecture there. So, I can imagine people would be defensive of that. So it's cool that they're not. I saw you climbed up on like a throne the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we were lucky that we didn't get kicked off that, to be honest, though.
So the reason that we ended up jumping on a podcast was you and Thijs. Thijs, is that how it's pronounced?
Thijs.
Wrote up an article in response to a video by Theorem, and it was a pretty interesting article about kind of applying scientific thinking to parkour and what are the limitations of how we can approach things. So I was curious to kind of hear your background on your scientific thinking and how you see the interaction of science and parkour.
So just a quick disclaimer. I'm going to say like Thijs pretty much wrote that whole article. So I don't want to take too much credit for that. Yeah. But I think, I mean, I'm a civil engineer.
Okay.
So I've kind of, I think, gotten a bit of my scientific thinking through that. And then also like the past few years now, I've gotten quite interested in philosophy as well. And I think that's had a big, I guess, a big impact as well on my critical thinking, sort of questioning things. And that I think has a nice crossover with the sort of scientific thinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like that's probably my basis for the, I guess, more scientific way of thought. I've always been a very direct person and I guess considered. Like I like thinking about what I say before I say things. Also, I'm very hesitant to talk about some things where I don't feel that I have that much knowledge, because I don't like saying something that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think I've taken that as well, sort of like taken that when talking to other people and just kind of like digested what they're saying. It's like, does this actually make sense? Is there any sort of evidence behind this? Which obviously there doesn't always have to be, but then I think it's a nice idea to sort of to speak in more, I'm not quite sure what the word is, but like terms like I think this is how it is, or this could be how it works. I guess more doubt in what you're saying.
Yeah, more
humility, maybe.
Humility is a good word. I mean, I think that basically, a lot of times, I think Bayesianism is an important thing for people to be aware of, right? Bayes' theorem is essentially that you have to consider the prior probability of something once you have new evidence to So you can't, you know, you don't, a classic example is mammograms, right? So if you know that a mammogram
is what, sorry?
Mammograms, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. If you know that mammograms detect cancer 90% of the time when cancer is present, and you get a positive test on a mammogram, what does that mean? Like, many doctors will say that there's a 90% chance that you have cancer, but that's actually the wrong conclusion to make, because they're not considering the base rate of the likelihood that you'll have cancer before you get the mammogram. And once you consider that, the mammogram is actually not that informative. This is Bayes' theorem. So when we're talking about new evidence of something, we have to consider, essentially, you should be thinking probabilistically. It's not a yes, absolutely, or no, absolutely. Generally, it's generally this indicates X, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And very often when we're looking at scientific evidence, if we're looking at the scientific evidence in regards to parkour, for instance, say, okay, well, how confident can we be in this evidence? How much? How quality is this evidence? How determinative is it? And a lot of times that's what's missed.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the sort of the maybe most important things I've learned as well, sort of regarding studies, is even if you can look at a study and you can see sort of the method that the people have used, the people like the authors of the study have used, they've kind of followed that method correctly. If you're not sort of what's it called? If you're not very into the scientific method, you have no idea if they've even used the right method. They might have done the method correctly, but maybe they haven't chosen the right method. Yeah. And I think for the I guess more lay person, which I still consider myself a part of, definitely. It's super easy to jump to conclusions. Just you read a study and you're like, oh, this showed this, and you're like, okay, that's how it is. Not okay, so I mean that study showed that, sure, great. Sort of how many people did they have in the study? Did they use the right methodology? What? Sorry, what?
Did they p-hack the study?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I think you have to have a really good grasp on academia, I guess, doing studies, that to even be able to interpret the study, at least with sort of that much certainty as a lot of people do.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Everyone wants to be evidence-based. Everyone wants to be evidence-based, but actually there's a real art towards applying the evidence and being able to understand the evidence and then see if it fits the situation that you're trying to apply it to.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very easy to go into, there's always this kind of argument around induction versus deduction in the scientific method, but mostly people induct a kind of intuitive gut feeling about what may be correct. And that's I think really where most science starts, is you have a hunch and you try to prove it, right? But
yeah, definitely
allows you to falsify, right? And then you have to be willing to falsify. But what happens a lot with people as they start looking into scientific research is that depending on the area you're looking at, you can find evidence that supports whatever preconceived narrative that you look into. And it's very easy to sort of just narrative craft something that supports what you are already believing, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's super, super easy to, even unknowingly, but to cherry pick data.
Yes. Yeah. And even within the, I mentioned p-hacking. I don't know if the audience will understand that, but p-hacking is basically within science. There's this idea of statistical significance, which is represented by p, and a p-value, I think 0.005 is considered statistically?
0.05, I think.
0.05, okay. 0.05. So that's, the likelihood that it is a false signal is supposed to be less than 0.05, right? But what you can do is you can set up a number of different potential outcomes of the study, or find outcomes of the study even after you've done the study, and you just search for the one that reaches statistical significance, and then you publish that.
Yeah.
But that actually is not very good, high quality evidence. So we can bias our studies in lots of different ways. So for someone who's doing parkour and is interested in understanding the scientific evidence, what are some of the key takeaways that you've found from the evidence and how we can treat it intelligently, right, and carefully?
Some of the key takeaways, I think, be more comfortable with doubting yourself.
That's a good one.
I think is a very important one. Accept that you're probably going to be wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, almost all the time. A little bit.
Yeah, probably, yeah. And then also probably adapt your use of language with those things in mind. I think, and this isn't actually something I've done myself, but I think if you really want to get good at like reading studies, kind of knowing what the studies, like even if they're done correctly, is learn statistics if you really want to get into that, because I've seen a lot of studies pretty much just debunked by people that know like basic statistics, or maybe not debunked, but at least sort of like questioned to a point where you're like, yeah, okay, maybe this is a nice study that you can sort of draw the conclusion of this area needs further research.
The conclusion of every study.
Yeah.
So, most people are less interested in some sense in the evidence than in how do they train, how do they get better at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The question is how we do that. And I think that this example of Theo Tanchimek's videos is actually an interesting one, because what people don't realize is that having a narrative can be very compelling, but that it can also be very misleading, right? And that
misleading,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you propose that X is the reason that Y is happening, right? Then it gives someone something to hold on to, but it can be, like here's actually an example that I think is a really useful one. Do you remember the days in the parkour community when you weren't supposed to let your knees pass your toes, and you weren't supposed to stand below 90 degrees in a landing?
Yeah.
So this was theoretically evidence-based. There was lots of kind of sources that you could find supporting this idea, but it was never, really had been empirically tested in a experimental design of anything that was high quality, high value study. It just sort of been accepted as a standard of the industry and then published repeatedly. So, this was a big topic of debate on the parkour forums. The story was, if you have knee pain, the reason you have knee pain is because you're quad dominant and you're descending too low in your landings and you're letting your knees track too far forward.
Yep.
So, I can tell you my story around that, but I'm curious to hear, like, how would you tell somebody to analyze that and think about that? And, do you think those ideas hold any water at this stage?
I think one of the sort of the main things that that Thijs and I are pushing through Ascending Strength, if you can call it that, is the I guess sort of you don't even have to be able to sort of falsify claims, because I mean the burden of truth, or the burden of proof, sorry, is on the people making the claims. So just by asking questions, like simple questions, pretty much you can be like, okay, so you say this, what makes you say this? And then you get sort of one level deeper and you're like, okay, so because of this, like why do you say this? Or do you have any like hard evidence for this? And I think just being a little bit more critical and asking questions when someone comes and tells you something like, for example, your knee pain is caused because your your knees track over your toes. You can be like, okay, why? Like, I mean, my knees do that every single day when I walk downstairs. Like why would that make it a thing? And then, I mean, maybe it is a thing. I mean, that's not saying that it can't be a thing, but then you're putting the burden of proof where it should be, I think. And you can let those people do the work for you, I guess, in a sort of sense of the way. I don't personally think it holds any water.
Do you think there's any evidence that even not bottoming out is important as part of your landing strategy?
I am not sure, actually. That's not something that I've spent a lot of time digging into. But I don't know, like just intuitively, probably not.
Okay.
But definitely don't hold me up on that.
So when you think about making your landings better, what are you paying attention to?
I think it's mostly a feelings-based thing, to be honest. When I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about landing so I feel in control. I feel it's like a stable landing. And depending on how big the jump is, what kind of like drop we're taking, I'll adjust my landing to sort of suit the needs of the situation. So some landings I'll pretty much like bottom out completely because it's a super heavy drop. And other landings I'll land like not straight-legged, but without very much bending in my legs at all. And it's like doing one thing or the other is not something that I sort of spend a lot of time thinking about. Actually, I usually go by a feelings-based approach of what actually feels like a good landing. And that, I mean, is a super vague thing, I know, but
yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the right answer, right? Sometimes certainty is actually misleading, right? About when you say this is the absolute correct way to land. We don't have good evidence that that's the correct way to land. We might be misguiding people. So there's a couple concepts that I like. One is just a nocebo effect, right? The nocebo effect is the opposite of the nocebo effect. When you tell somebody, you give them a pill, they get better whether the pill has medicine or not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The intervention has happened can have a positive effect. The opposite of that, the nocebo effect, is that when you tell someone something is bad for them,
yeah, exactly,
it's worse for them, right? If someone tells you that your knees will hurt if you let your knees track over your toes, that's actually an independent factor in making you hurt.
Yeah.
When we create all these stories about, okay, if you stand with your hip tucked out to one side, you're going to be creating a habitual distortion of your spine that's going to make it harder for you to land because your feet are going to slip. Like we're potentially pathologizing perfectly normal behavior and giving people stories about their pain that might actually be very self-limiting.
And
Go ahead.
I think as well, I was just going to say sort of regarding the whole the narrative thing. I guess getting an easy answer is like, it's such a, I think, a human thing to want that. So if someone comes and tells you, oh, all your problems are caused by this, you'll just like, you kind of it's a lot easier to just latch onto, because you're like, oh, that's great. If I just fix this, then all my problems will go away, instead of someone saying like, yeah, it could be this, could be that. We're not actually sort of really sure why it is, which is probably also not the best way of helping someone, because of placebo as well. But just that sort of giving people a very easy solution to latch onto is just like, it feeds right into people's fears. Maybe, I'm not sure if that's kind of the right word, but.
Well, I think it feeds into our desire for clarity and patterns, right?
Yeah.
Right. And how you orient around narratives, and having a narrative that is coherent is a desire in itself that we have. So when you have an injury and you don't understand it, like, having something that helps you feel like you understand it is hard to let go of, actually. And I found this a lot, like, the research on back pain, from my understanding, is that the most back pain doesn't have a clear mechanical cause. Mm-hmm. But you talk to lots of people who have back pain, and they're going to tell you that, I slipped a disc, or, I have a degenerative disc disease, or my psoas are too tight and I just need to keep stretching them, or blah, blah, blah. They'll have a story, a mechanical story.
Yeah.
And when I explain that, like, there is a psychological component or a neurological component. It could be just excitation of this neural pathway that's associated with pain that has moved into your body. And there might be another approach to just calming your body down, or bringing. It's very hard for people to accept that, because having this clear mechanical thing, even if it's not helping them and they've been in pain for years, and it hasn't, no amount of chiropractic has fixed it for them.
Yep.
At least the story makes sense to them.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually like a huge thing. My girlfriend's a physiotherapist, and she previously worked a lot with chronic pain patients. And like, I think one of the biggest hurdles was getting people to let go of that story of like, I'm a chronic pain patient, so like it's never going to get better. And it's like, even if it's like a shitty life, like just the fact that they kind of know what's going to happen, like, oh, if I do this, my back's going to hurt, and it's going to keep doing that. It gives some sort of like some sort of security, which is hard to let go of for some reason.
Yeah, because having things make sense is important, right? It's independently important, like, maybe above being out of pain.
Yeah.
So we have, we talked about the nocebo, but the other one that I love is
what? Sorry,
it's a concept that I get from Nassim Taleb. It talks about iatrogenics, right? Which is the idea that we need to consider much more carefully the potential damage that an intervention causes, right? You can say, okay, we gave this medicine to people, and we study the ways in which they improved, and that'll tell us something. But if we don't study the ways in which they potentially are damaged by it, then we're missing a lot of the picture. And the history of Western medicine is that up until quite recently, the iatrogenic effects were much larger than vice versa, right? All of the bleeding and surgery without washing your hands was probably killing more people than just not going to the doctor would have.
Yeah.
So we have we have to take this into account. I actually think this is a really important sort of principle for us as coaches as well. Like, one of my key takeaways from sort of studying the motor learning research and comparing parkour to gymnastics and track and field is this idea that parkour athletes have achieved, I would say parkour athletes have achieved parity in development of athleticism to what we see within gymnastics and track and field. And this is despite not having, most athletes are self-taught. They don't have a established coaching. They have very little financial incentive, as you said. You don't make a lot of.
Yeah.
Like how many guys do you think make good money doing parkour in the world?
Not many.
Like
I'd say like less than 100.
Less than 100. Do you think there's anybody in parkour who makes over $1 million from doing parkour?
Like a year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably some of the maybe if anyone, some of the Red Bull sponsored athletes could be sort of, but probably I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea.
But yeah, I'm just saying, there's no financial incentive to do parkour, right? There's so minimal compared to other sports.
Yeah, I mean, if financial incentive is your reason for doing something, like parkour is definitely not the right thing to go for.
So we have low financial incentives. I think it's still a pretty small community, especially when you consider like if the best athletes in the world right now started training on average 10 years ago or 8 years ago, the population of athletes 8 years ago was pretty small. 10 years ago was pretty small. So small scale group. Mostly they started later in life. Like you don't meet many elite parkour athletes who started when they were 5 years old.
No, not yet. I'm sure that's going to come like pretty soon, but
I was talking,
but
I interviewed Chris and Damien DeVoe from World Chase Tag yesterday. And I had no idea that Orlando from Team Fat is Christian's son.
I didn't know that either. Huh.
So there's that example. But I think he was 11 when all this started. I have a son. He's 6 years old. He's pretty amazing athlete, actually. We'll see.
Nice.
But yeah, it's not really a thing. So the fact that there is this extraordinary parity that's been achieved, to me, is actually an indication that a lot of our traditional ways of educating people in movement might actually be inhibiting their development as much as it is allowing their development. And one of the other sort of points that I make in this argument is, in general, what I found is that the best athletes within parkour communities tend to be athletes who are self-taught, not athletes who show up for classes. Like if you go to a parkour gym, the athletes who go to the gym are better than the athletes who go to coaches. Now there's a huge selection bias problem in that argument, which is, are they better because they didn't show up for the classes? Or are they better because when you're naturally more talented, there's less drive to go get instruction? But
that's true. It could also just be because like those people that like are naturally more talented and maybe have or maybe not naturally more talented, but like have a drive to train, they want to go training like all the time, and they don't just want to sort of limit themselves to like 1 or 2 classes a week.
Yeah, and then their appetite outstrips the capacity of the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. But you can use it as a prior, right, without establishing to what degree it's true. And the indication to me is that as coaches, we should consider that the way that we intervene in an athlete's training has as much potential to inhibit their development as to assist their development. And that's a very different attitude for a coach, right? So I think that coaches, like doctors, should start with the attitude of first do no harm. Mm-hmm. And not assume that just because this is the way that it's been passed down, or because you can see a change that you think is going to make the athlete better, that it actually will, without, looking for some sort of empirical evidence that it's improving the athlete or getting communication with the athlete.
Yeah, because I mean, statistically, humans are pretty damn terrible at seeing patterns or like seeing correct patterns. and actually sort of being able to judge things just by perception alone.
Yeah, we're amazing at seeing patterns in specific contexts and really bad at seeing patterns in other contexts because we evolved to solve a specific set of problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have this kind of specific ability to solve, finding specific patterns, but we're trying to exact it for all these other purposes that it's not necessarily well adapted to.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've gotten really into philosophy, and I sort of noticed that you're coming from maybe more of a materialist philosophical position. I was curious how your interest in philosophy developed and how it interacts with this idea of parkour philosophy.
My interest in philosophy came about through veganism, actually. I started I think listening to like a lot of vegan philosophers, and then I kind of just found out that I had absolutely no idea like what a lot of people were saying. So I started reading up on more stuff and listening to more people, and I mean, I still struggle a lot of the time to understand what they're saying because philosophy is so damn hard.
Yeah, believe me, I know.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where it started. And then going more sort of parkour philosophical, I guess. I guess it sort of more just plays like it plays into it sort of through a more critical way of going about things, asking more questions and being less certain about most things, actually. I think being sort of more open to things not being as I've been told pretty much like my whole life, and also not necessarily being as I feel or think they are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So one thing that I find interesting is I think that science, and philosophy as well, can be very good at teaching someone doubt, right? Critical thinking. I try to balance active open-mindedness with critical thinking, right? You want to actively be able to not close down ideas as they're introduced to you, but then you also want to make sure that you are applying some sort of critical discrimination to ideas, and you're trying to balance those two things.
Definitely.
But I wonder sometimes if, like, as an athlete, faith is actually really valuable, right? I noticed that a lot of elite athletes are quite religious, quite superstitious, and it's like I don't want to. It's like when I'm standing at a jump, that potentially is dangerous to me. I have to at some point place faith in my ability. I have to trust in my ability to make that jump, right? Like considering, that there's some tail end of probability that I might fail is something that I have to actually close my mind to. Right? I have to get rid of that in order to achieve what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious how you balance that desire to sort of build this maybe probabilistic way of approaching the world with acting in the world where you must assume faith in things.
To be completely honest, that's not really anything that I've thought that much about, really. I don't think I see them as a contradiction in my way of living. I don't know. I think that's something I'd need to think a little bit more about to give any sort of interesting answer.
Okay. Yeah. Were you interested in the idea of parkour philosophy when you got involved in parkour?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Did you ever go back to being interested in it, or is your philosophy sort of completely been independent of your parkour development?
I'd say it's mostly been independent of my parkour development. Yeah, I don't know. I think when I do parkour, it's much more of a feelings based thing, and I'm like, of course, I'm logical as well about things, just like breaking jumps and that sort of thing. But as you say, it is like it's a feelings faith based approach a lot of the time when you're doing a big jump. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think I have a very good answer for you there.
Okay, so different line of questioning. I'm just curious about this. So my understanding is that veganism is often kind of oriented around moral utilitarianism. Is that correct?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So what is the philosophy within veganism that kind of caught your attention? Where did it lead you to?
Well, I think the philosophy part of it came afterwards. So to start off with me, it was I guess a feelings based thing that I didn't think what we're doing was fair, and I didn't really want to I didn't want to partake in that industry, I guess. And then the philosophical thinkings came more afterwards when I tried, I'd had conversations with people and I couldn't really sort of express my my reasoning for doing a lot of things. So my interest came from that way, trying to sort of to ground my choices, or sort of ground my feelings for that. Give me some way to at least to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's not just because I feel like it.
Who are the philosophers that you started paying attention to?
So I read a book by Peter Singer, who's very, very much a utilitarian.
I was going to say, when I think vegan philosophy, I think Peter Singer and moral utilitarianism.
Yeah, exactly. I've also actually, one of the first books I read was by someone called Christine Korsgaard, who is a deontologist.
Okay.
And I think I think probably most people are probably utilitarian, but there's also quite a lot of
most
deontologists. Probably most vegan people are utilitarian. There's quite a lot of deontologists. Personally, I think I'm somewhere in between, if that makes sense.
I'm in between. I think, I'm not sure that they're exhaustive, but I think that deontological moral reasoning is the appropriate way to reason in intimate relationships and small community, and that when we have to look at large scale problems, then we have to switch towards more of a utilitarian moral framework. Deontology doesn't scale all the way up.
No.
And utilitarianism doesn't scale all the way down, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that roughly translates quite well for me. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything called threshold deontology.
I'm not aware of that yet, but
no, we'll have a look at it if that's interesting. Yeah, and then I've also just I've watched a lot of I guess YouTube philosophy as well, which is some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but still interesting as well. Yeah, I don't remember what you asked me. No, who I'd started listening or reading. Yeah. I think that's.
Are you getting yourself into?
Yeah. What? Sorry.
I was just asking who the thinker is. What philosophical traditions and schools you're paying attention to.
Yeah. I think we covered that sort of reasonably.
We're coming kind of towards the end of our time to chat today. So I was curious to ask you, like, where do you think kind of parkour is going, and if anything, is there a direction you'd like to see it go?
I think parkour is going towards, parkour competitions are becoming very much a thing.
Yeah.
And I think parkour is going probably that way as well. And maybe the sort of the same way as skating or snowboarding, in some sort of way. I'm super interested to see where parkour is 30 years from now and how it looks. Because if you look at it from like now and then 10 years ago, it's a completely different place.
Yeah,
I think. Where I want it to go, I'm not sure if I have any sort of actual like specific direction I want it to go. I hope people keep doing it for fun, I guess, and it doesn't become I guess something too serious, which is not to say that that's a bad thing for someone that wants to, like, let's say, just do competitions. But I feel that a lot of the time some people can kind of lose the playfulness and the fun, which is one of the things I fell in love with when it comes to the competitive side of things. Even though I enjoy competition and competitions as well, but I think people they have to maybe think to themselves about the sort of positives and the negatives about pretty much anything they do, right? But especially regarding that. Yeah, no, I hope parkour can help a lot of people in I guess in I can't remember the English word for it. I guess the sort of the way they evolve, or that's not the right word. I guess just sort of the way they go about their sort of day-to-day lives, which is maybe like the super corny thing, like parkour has helped me overcome obstacles in my life. But I think it's a really nice tool that can help you maybe sort of see things in a little bit more of a realistic perspective. This is like one of my good friends said that so like he can stand up and like do a huge jump. Why can't he stand in front of a class and talk about some report he's written or something like that? Which I think that kind of makes, in some ways, a lot of sense to me, even though it's something completely different. So it's probably not like completely transferable, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, what you're describing really sounds a lot like what we do with Evolve Move Play, right? That's the basic idea is how do we utilize parkour, and then let's say, how do you utilize parkour as a way to have more meaningful life and to develop your character such that the physical practice transfers effectively into these other realms. And then how do we, and then if the goal is actually the transfer, is parkour actually the right tool at a specific time, or are there other tools that we need to put it in relationship to? And so then there's the development of an ecology of practices for self-development, self-cultivation, self-transcendence. That's essentially the idea. That's also where I would like to see parkour go. But I think there's a role for competition within that. And I hope that parkour, as it develops sort of like rock climbing, where the competition formats don't overtake the activity itself, and they remain sort of like, you can be a climber, you climb and you speed climb, but you still climb. You don't only speed climb, right? Bouldering competitions, but you still do other types of climbing. And I do think there's some degree of specialization to the point where people are losing that in rock climbing, from what I understand. It's still a broad activity that most people participate in at the level of breadth, not at the level of specialization. I think I can see a future where, some people are speed competitors at NAPC, and some people are really into a world chase tag, and some people are into the style Red Bull Argonaut. And then you also have athletes who cross over and go from one to the other. They might be speed athletes for a while and then go to world chase tag for a while. I think that'd be a good way for it to develop. And I think I would like to see a future where parkour athletes can actually make money doing it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that's, that would be like a really big step for parkour as well. Actually people being able to see a future in it.
Yeah. It's
because I've seen a lot of people who have done parkour, been really good at it, really enjoyed it. And then they've gotten a full-time job, and parkour has just kind of gone away a little bit at a time.
Yeah. It seems to me that the community kind of hit a real peak around 2013, and that it's sort of receded a little bit, and it's still developing, but it hasn't kind of got the momentum that it had leading up into that period of time. For a variety of reasons. I think Instagram and Facebook and YouTube not liking parkour anymore very much has been a lot less friendly than early YouTube and the online forum as a way to kind of grow the community and culture. But I think also for a lot of athletes who got into it as it was coming up, there was probably the sense that because it's growing so fast, right around the corner is the era in which we can be sponsored like snowboarding athletes and skateboarding athletes and skiing athletes. And that just didn't happen. And I think it's because parkour doesn't involve any equipment. Right?
Is what, sorry?
It doesn't involve any equipment. It's a lot harder to sell a product to the parkour audience than to other audience. So the value of your skills to a brand is substantially less than a comparably trained skier, because a $700 pair of skis that's associated with an elite skier can move a lot of product. But
that's actually a good point.
Yeah,
that's not something I thought that much about. I guess shoes are probably the only thing we have, and even then, you can pretty much use whatever shoes you want, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make as big a difference for sure. Right?
No.
The difference in performance between a really nicely designed pair of skis and a entry level pair of skis is a lot more than between a midline sneaker and a world's best parkour design sneaker. Right? It's probably not nearly the same level.
Yeah, I think I'd intuitively agree with you on that.
Yeah. So
we should do a study on it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Well, this is awesome, Oliver. Thanks for giving me your time. I know you're not you don't have a lot to sell, but if people want to follow you online, Instagram, anywhere else they should follow you, your YouTube channel?
No, my YouTube channel is pretty much dead. I don't post that much on that anymore. Pretty much Instagram. I have a TikTok as well. You can follow me there if you want, but
yeah, we'll put the links in the episode description. And thank you very much for your time.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. It was really nice.
Hey, you've reached the end of another Evolve, Move, Play podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, if you want to be involved in the conversation, please consider joining us in our new membership subscription so you can get access to question and answers with our live speakers once a month, question and answers with me once a month, and a dedicated forum to discuss everything going on in the podcast, as well as a general discussion of movement on our general movement forums. If you're interested in that, make sure to check out the link below, get signed up, and join a part of our membership community. If you can't join our membership community right now, it's still always helpful if you can like, share, and subscribe, and even hit that bell and get notifications for upcoming Evolve, Move, Play podcasts. But adios for now, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.